Hi, boys and girls. I have a special story to share with you today called Where Does the Teacher Live? I chose this book today because in our math lesson, I gave you guys a little tour around my house on the outside. So you guys have seen my house a little bit on the inside. We've read some stories in my bedroom. Today we are here in the lovely guest room. We've done math in the kitchen. My parents have read you a story in our living room. My mom has read a story in her bedroom. And then you just got a tour of outside, so I thought it would be fun to read a book about where does the teacher live, since you have figured out and seen a lot of where I live when I'm not at college. So let's dive into this book. Where does the teacher live? It was Monday morning. The children in class 2 to 3 were having their milk. Alba was sitting next to her best friend Nancy. Nancy, said Alba, do you know where Mrs. Greengrass lives? Mrs. Greengrass was the teacher of class 2 to 3. She lives in school, said Nancy. All the teachers live in school. Willie was sitting behind them. Oh, no, said Willie. She lives in a house, just like we do. Willie was the smartest boy in the class. Maybe Willie is right, said Alba. Let's find out, said Willie. We can wait after school and see where she goes. Oh, she won't ever come out, said Nancy. At 3 o'clock, Alba, Willie, and Nancy waited in front of the school. Mrs. Greengrass came out. She did not see the children. They were hiding behind a big boxwood bush. See, said Alba to Nancy. Willie was right. Mrs. Greengrass does not live in the school. They followed Mrs. Greengrass down the street, across the avenue, and along the park. Then she crossed another street. My mother will not let me cross any more streets, said Nancy. All right, said Alba. We can just watch. A bus stopped. Mrs. Greengrass got on. The bus went up the street and turned at the corner. She must live far away, said Alba. Maybe she lives in another country, said Nancy. Oh, no, said Willie. That was a city bus. She must live in the city. Maybe Willie is right, said Alba. This is fun, said Willie. Let's do it again tomorrow. At 3 o'clock on Tuesday, Alba, Willie, and Nancy hid behind the boxwood bush and waited for Mrs. Green. Look, said Willie. She's walking the same way. She's going to take the bus again. They followed Mrs. Greengrass down the street, across the avenue, and along the park. They watched her cross the street. A bus went in front of her. I told you, said Willie. Then the bus moved away. Surprise! Mrs. Greengrass was still there. She was still walking. Willie, said Alba, you were wrong. Maybe she's not going home today, said Willie. Maybe she can walk to her house, said Alba. Maybe she can walk 10 miles, said Nancy. No one can walk 10 miles, said Willie. Maybe she can, said Alba. You were wrong today. She did not take the bus. Mrs. Greengrass kept walking. She went around the corner. They could not see her anymore. The next day was Wednesday. It was raining hard. Here comes Mrs. Greengrass, said Alba. She cannot walk home today, said Willie. It's too wet. Mrs. Greengrass came down the steps. She looked to the left. She looked to the right. Suddenly, she put her hand up in the air. Look, said Willie. A taxi is stopping for her. Mrs. Greengrass got in the taxi. Willie, Alba, and Nancy waited to see which way the taxi went. It went the same way as the bus. Mrs. Greengrass has many ways of going home, said Willie. I know something, said Alba. Mrs. Greengrass lives on the west side of the city. This is the east side, and she always goes to the other side. I'm getting all wet, said Nancy, and I'm getting tired of this. Tomorrow, let's just ask Mrs. Greengrass where she lives. Oh, no. Wait one more day. This is a big mystery. And we are good detectives, said Willie. Okay, one more day, said Nancy. So on Thursday, Alba, Willie, and Nancy waited for Mrs. Greengrass. She came out of the school. She just stood there. She did not walk. She did not get on a bus. She did not take a taxi. A blue car came up the street. A woman was driving the car. She said hello to Mrs. Greengrass. Mrs. Greengrass is getting into the car, said Nancy. The blue car drove away. It is not going the same way as the bus and the taxi. It is not going the same way that Mrs. Greengrass walked, said Willie. I'm all mixed up, said Alba. Tomorrow we will ask Mrs. Greengrass where she lives. On Friday, Alba, Willie, and Nancy were eating lunch. Mrs. Greengrass came into the lunchroom. Mrs. Greengrass! They shouted. The teacher came over to them. Mrs. Greengrass, where do you live? Asked Alba. Do you live in school? Asked Nancy. Do you live in the city? Asked Willie. So many questions, said Mrs. Greengrass. Why do you want to know? We just wondered, said Alba. We followed you, said Willie. On Monday, we saw you take the bus. On Tuesday, we saw you walk, said Nancy. You walked the same way as the bus. On Wednesday, we saw you take a taxi, said Willie. It went the same way as the bus. I live on the west side, said Mrs. Greengrass. See, I told you she lived on the west side, said Alba to Willie. But yesterday, you got a ride in a car, said Nancy. The car went a different way, said Willie. You are good detectives, said Mrs. Greengrass. Yesterday, my friend drove me to her house for dinner. She smiled. Today, I'm going home another way. Wait for me after school. At 3 o'clock, Alba, Willie, and Nancy stood in front of the school. "Maybe she'll fly home in a helicopter," said Nancy. Mrs. Greengrass came out of the school. "Hello, children," she said. A small truck stopped in front of the school. And it says, "Ice cream." A man was driving the truck. Mrs. Greengrass said, "Children, this is my uncle, Frank Greengrass. He sells ice cream to all the stores." Frank Greengrass climbed out of the truck. He gave something to Mrs. Greengrass. Mrs. Greengrass walked over to the children. "Here are 3 chocolate marshmallow ice cream pops," she said. "You are all such good detectives." And Alba, Nancy, Willie, and Mrs. Greengrass went home on the ice cream truck. And that is the end of our story. So that was pretty crazy where she ended up living. I did not expect that. That was such a cool ending to our story. I will see you guys tomorrow for more read alouds. Bye!